All right, here we go. Welcome. I've been a hobbyist my entire life. My dad, when I was a kid, had a stint with a fish room and kept a Lonely Hearts tank in my bedroom. And then I took over the kindergarten fish tank, I guess. And so I've been an aquarist my whole life. It's been a long time. I've kept aquariums longer than a lot of aquarists have been alive. I get asked one question a lot when that comes out. And people will ask me, they're like, what's different about the hobby? And honestly, I've never had an answer, and I still don't know if I do, but I will do my best. Let me fix this. Let's get comfy. Got a tea. All right, so I've been an aquarist for a long time. I say that to folks, and they'll ask me again, what's changed in the hobby? I remember a lot of changes. I remember when they started to crack the genetic code of animals, in the 80s and whatnot, and hybrids started to appear. I remember the flamingo guppy, right? And just people went crazy over the flamingo guppy. It was one of the first. So a lot of changes. The small fish tanks, the nano tanks that people torture fish in, that grew just crazily crazy. There's a few differences for sure. I'll get into the biggest, but and like there are so many hybrids now that it's baffling to me. I've been into killifish, which are kind of a naturally pretty fish, considered one of them, and all these hybridized fish just kind of pushed killifish down on the totem pole in a way, because, or on the ladder, because there's just so many cool fish out there right now, like convict cichlids. Like, how many of those are there now? Like, it's awesome. So a lot of changes, but the thing I feel has changed the most in the hobby, and it's two or three things, but they're a little related. And that is, let me take a sip of tea. Love Earl Grey tea. Keeps me from drinking coffee. I have a coffee issue, but bad. Like, I have a caffeine issue, and I should not drink coffee, and it gives me anxiety and makes me hyper, and so Earl Grey tea. Anyway, the biggest changes, again, it's a couple components to this. It's hubris and social networking. And what I mean, if you don't know what hubris is, it's just your self-worth, or overvaluing your self-worth, just coming to the hobby like, oh, I'm going to, tear stuff up. That's hubris speaking, right? Bravado. And the internet. The internet's really interesting because, and they're a little interrelated. And let me give you an example. So if back in the day I wanted to start a fish club, say, just use an example that everyone can relate to. I want to start a fish club. Well, to do that back in the day, through the 80s, 90s, it was a lot more challenging. Like, you had to go to a store just to get stuff printed, right? So what you really needed to do was get a fish store or two on board, and you had to get some marketing materials and go hang them up around town. And there was a process to it. Nowadays, it's just start a group with a fish club name and say you're a fish club, and the basics of the fish clubs may not have changed a whole lot over time, But what has happened is those steps people used to have to take to get any traction in starting that fish club, you can just do it overnight now, right? You got a couple friends that share the heck out of that link. And what it does is, I mean, just the internet in general. Like I can go on to any pretty much Facebook group, and a lot of the posts are rehoming and, just Aquaria moved to social networking a lot in some ways. So, does that make sense now that where the past took some work, you had to establish yourself, so you had a little bit of a history now behind you. Whereas today, you just need to be popular and start your own group, essentially, and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, you're popular. And that's where the hubris comes in. And this is really what bugs me in Aquaria more than anything. It's just dealing with, if you don't know this fact, this is interesting. This plays a big role in everything I do about Aquaria as a business. Even Aquarius is, most aquarists are in and out of the hobby in 3 to 5 years. Get a tank, get 2 tanks, get 3 tanks. Start downsizing, start rehoming your fish, the ones that didn't die, and all of a sudden your fish tanks are sitting out in the backyard. Or they have something different in them. So, what happens is, when someone then had I'm starting that club and it took some traction, and the cream will rise to the top over time. But when someone can just come in and be like, I'm God's gift to Aquaria. I'm a giant guppy breeder. I got like so many kinds of guppies. Buy my guppies. And regardless of who they are, regardless of what they say, and it's very hard to tell who's who, right? Because of the bravado, because of the hubris, right? They're like, I'm God's gift. Most of them are in and out of the hobby in just a couple years, right? I think I've like I said, I've watched a lot. I've read articles. There's been questions on the census and, some studies on pets, but most aquarists are in and out in 3 to 5 years. After 5 years, I believe the number is about 70 to 80% of aquarists are gone that got into the hobby. And over 10 years, really, only 1 or 2% of aquarists remain in the hobby. And again, it kind of depends on what your definition of what an aquarist is and whatnot, but my point is it's a very transitory hobby. So again, then, whereas before the social networking, cream had a little time to rise to the top. Now it's just about a matter of how fast you can grow your group, or even start a group with a club name, and it takes away a bit of the process. So I find then a lot of these people and running these supposed clubs, it's not really clubs, they're just usually someone that wants to sell an extra pair to guppies, and that's kind of how they corner their market. Like you start to get a lot of those people that they're not the cream, but they become the voice of the hobby, and that's what really bugs me, because they don't understand the hobby. They're like, oh, and they buy into the Aquaria family stuff. We're all a family, and a couple years later, they're all haggard and like leaving the hobby, and it's like, hey, we're all your Aquaria family friends now, like, do I even call you and come over and hang out? It's all hubris, right? That creates that effect, right? So cream doesn't get time to rise to the top. And I just came up with that analogy, so good for me. Cup of tea, or sip of tea. I'll give you a good example. I participated with a vendor show. I have a pretty enormous collection of plants, and I can trade for all sorts of stuff. But I went to a show. I usually don't attend them, and it was fine. It was fine. But the person that ran it was made a deal with me to share some stuff around, right? I'm down for that. I'm a technology guy. So I did it. This person did not. And it's like, and I asked, like, dude, you didn't follow through with this. And, well, I don't want to get involved with this club, or I forget what his reasoning was, you know? And it's like, you made a commitment, you know? Like, how can you just uncommit? You know, like, no, I've kind of changed my mind after I followed through, right? Hubris. That people like this can just come in and then they just think they are directing the hobby. And it may sound like I have some hubris here, and I may. I've been in the course a long time, and I do have my opinions. But just to have the hubris to undo something with someone like myself, you know, like, whatever. And it's just not that example. That's with a lot of just everything, you know, these little businesses that pop up. Like, speaking of that show, the other day, because I went around and collected business cards from all the tables at that event, and this was just the other day, and I was cleaning my desk and found those business cards. So I went through, and most of those businesses just don't even exist anymore. Where they went, I don't know. Where'd the people go? I don't really know. Where'd their fish go? I don't know. So, and again, it's not about the people. It's about, again, I want to take it back to the social networking. So when you don't have the cream really leading your industry, it gets there's a lot of just wonkiness. And so then in the social networking realm, which I say is the thing I see the biggest change in, is the voices that are in there, like, just as experts, you know, I'm the guppy guy, right? Like, guppy guy, right? And I know all about guppies. I'm the big guy. I got the most aquariums in my whatever. Doesn't mean you're good. Like, anybody can breed some guppies. Doesn't mean you're knowledgeable, because if you, it's the hubris. I'm not really trying to point out anybody. I'm just saying that this flows over onto social networking. And, you know, go into any of your groups. Like, how often do you see educational posts, you know, from sophisticated aquarists? Like, you get the random shares here and there, but like, I can put on a really nice video, right? Put it on there, but I'm not pretty, you know. I don't have shiny teeth because I drink too much tea, right? I don't really make fantastic videos, so my stuff can get overlooked. And I kind of forgot what I was talking about. Oh, because I was looking at my fish. It's one of my favorites right there. My water dogs. They just like to eat. Anyway, so the hubris shows up on social networking, and I don't know if I have the greatest example. Like I said, you just have to go onto any of your Facebook groups, and it's just trash. It's trash. I'll use this example. you know, most fish have lifespans. Most fish we found out are pretty intelligent. They form familial bonds. Like, fish are a live animal, and how we treat them has been really, really sad. Like, so I can go into virtually any Facebook group, and it's rehoming, and oh, I gotta get rid of this fish because these fish aren't compatible, you know, because they don't listen. Yeah, you know, and it's just overwhelming. And you gotta understand, those are just the fish that people care enough about to rehome. You know, a lot of people just, their fish just die. And yeah, I made a mention about the average Aquarius. Well, it's no surprise that the average lifespan of a fish is not all that long, right? I mean, most fish are actually, I don't know, abused, neglected. And I'll tell you, who says that in any of these groups? Like, dude, why did you mix those fish to begin with? Or, you know, like, perhaps, and I'll tell you one thing, this has gotten kicked out of quite a few groups. I can't help myself sometimes, but, you know, when people put up those neglected animal posts, you know, what's wrong with my fish, you know? Or what should I do? You know, my number one response is you should just bag up all those fish and bring them back to the store where they will not be neglected, and let them find them good homes until you've figured out how to treat them properly, right? I've been kicked out of more groups by saying that, though it's how I feel. Like, so I'm getting a little off track. It's hard to explain, like, because this is bizarre. I'll tell people that the trash that's on Facebook, they're like, well, it's always, it doesn't matter. It's just human behavior. It's what we do. Same with the hubris. It's not unique to these people that start these things. Just, I got a group and now I'm a club. You're right. That's always been there. That hubris has always been there. It's just those people leading the conversation bores me. You know, like a lot of the club type speakers, like they're like YouTube people, and you know, like, oh, look at my house full of fish tanks. And the first thing I think is like, how do you care for all those fish tanks? I know you don't. Like, show me the tanks when you have not cleaned them, and I'll probably see neglected fish, right? And it's not even that. It's just silly on multiple levels. Like a household full of aquariums, if you are, because of what you're putting in your fish tank too, the chemicals, and that's a, do you want that, your children breathing what you put into your aquariums, right? But you can't talk about those type of things because it just upsets people, and you know, oh, we're family here, you know, and like that. But that, oh, we're family, it's led by people that, I wouldn't even say hubris, disingenuous, you know, like, you're not my family. And I'll give you a good example of that. My wife and I went to a gas station, pull up, and there's a sign right there. It says, "We love your engine more than you. We're your gas family," or whatever it was. And I just wanted to throw up in my mouth. I told my wife, I'm like, do you think if we drove down the road and our engine seizes up that anybody from this company would care? Like, they'd call us like, oh, you just got gas from us and your engine seized up. Could I ask you a little bit why? Just misleading, misguided information out there. People don't want to listen to me. They just want to listen to someone like, I got a house full of fish tanks. Let's look at them all. pass. Anyway, did I make sense? Like I said, this started out, I had to take a long way to get here. 'Cause I've never known how to answer it, and I still don't. And that question being, what's different in the hobby now over decades ago? And it's just the people that just start stuff, and it's just so easy to be a club or run a swap meet or just any of this stuff. Be a business. You just got to say you're awesome online, and this is this mob of sheep that'll follow you. Ooh, new family. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Probably talked too much, spoke too much. But leave your opinions in the comments about what I told you. And I brought up some kind of things, but the topic was just what's changed in the hobby. And I just feel it's just too easy. It's been much easier for people just to put their bravado there, we're family, or like, we have guppies for sale. Like, whatever. I don't want your fish in my fish tanks because I know you trade too many fish. So I don't want your fish in my fish tanks because it's going to kill half my shrimp probably because of the stuff that I'm going to bring over from your fish room. So no thank you, Mr. Awesome Online. And, this issue has really caused... You were to say, what is the one thing in the aquaria business that you've learned? And it was just to avoid people. Like, if you put yourself out there, there's so much noise from, like, who is it you're speaking with? You're probably speaking with someone there that's just going to be in the hobby for a couple years. They're going to just torture, neglect some fish, and then they're out of the hobby. So it's really what the hobby seems to have become. And not that it's any different. I'm just saying, just the packaging of it is just gross. Anyway, I don't know. Does that make sense? Let me know. Let me know what you think.